Welcome to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 497. I'm your host, Barney Smith of storycomic.com, and we're excited to have with us the internationally acclaimed and award-winning children's book author and social entrepreneur, Megan Carol Haas. Megan.
Hello. Nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes. And so this is interesting because you're on the West Coast. I'm on the East Coast. So our voices are carrying across 4,000 miles right now.
It's incredible.
I know. The magic of technology, I tell you. Yeah.
It comes from space.
So I'm excited to sit down and talk to you because you came out with a book about, it was a couple of years ago, correct? Was it 2022?
It was a little earlier than that. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe it was 2022. Yeah. It was
Okay.
it was with the pandemic. Near the pandemic.
Right.
Maybe right after when did the pandemic really end? That's the question. It was probably 2022. Yeah. Let's just
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's the book is called The Adventures of the Wizard Aquarius.
It is. Yes.
Now, so I guess my first question for you, Megan, too, for listeners meeting you for the first time, how would you introduce yourself? Because you are a person of many hats, which has been incredible. You're an author, you're a social entrepreneur, you're a voice artist, you founded a school, right? Did I read that correct?
Yes. 2 schools. Yeah.
So how do you introduce yourself as one of those particular, or all of the above?
It depends on who I'm talking to and what the purpose of our conversation is, what I'll focus on. That I would say there's a theme that has run through my life, and there's just variations on that theme. And, they come from 3 places, which is I was raised Quaker, I went to Waldorf school, and I play a lot of traditional music and sing and dance. And so those are 3 worldwide communities and that I grew up in. And so everything I do has been very much to serve community. And whether that is, doing PSAs and voice work or, managing and organizing communities for companies or helping coach companies to create better communities for themselves. There's a myriad of ways to do things. And I love to create those variations and live life that way. I think of life as whole cloth that I get to kind of cut things out of and stitch and create.
So let's talk a little bit about your book, The Adventures of the Wizard Aquarius. Where did your inspiration come to write this?
Well, so I come from a family of writers, but I never really planned on writing a book at that time. I was living in London with my then almost 3-year-old. And it was really sort of the fact that for the first time in my life, I had a child kind of later in life, and I'd always worked and lived independently and autonomously. And suddenly I was in a situation where I had a little kid, and I wasn't in a country where I could work. I had devoted myself for the first 4 years of her life to really laying down a foundation for her. And so all of that creativity and kind of, forward motion that my life had been in, experiencing up until I had my daughter was didn't really have anywhere to go. And so I'd always wanted to be the kind of parent who told stories at night. And I tried getting a couple interesting themes going with my daughter, and she just really was like, oh, that's okay. That's okay. And then one day she was in the bath. And I have brought a visual aid here, not of her in the bath. She was in the bath, and she pointed to this picture on the wall that I'd had since I was probably 26 and had moved to Washington. I'd gotten in an antique store, and it looked like this is the very picture right here.
Wow.
It's like a wax sort of faux woodcut, and it's the archetype of the zodiac sign Aquarius, which is the humanitarian. And so she looked at that as if she was seeing it for the first time as some kind, sometimes kids do that. Like they just focus and they actually see something. And she said, what is that? Tell me the story of that. And I was not going to tell her the whole, all of astrology and astronomy and the stars at that time, but I did the age old, I'll tell you at bedtime. So I did say, well, that's Aquarius and you're an Aquarius because she is an Aquarius. And so during the day, I kind of thought a little bit about it, but I kind of really thought about all that creativity that was pent up. And by the time we got to bedtime, I pulled this story from somewhere very deep inside of me because as a very highly visual person, I was trying to think how I could relate this archetype of the humanitarian and relate it to her and create a world for her that wasn't like the world that we were in. So I just somewhere inside of me, I said, once upon a time there was a wizard called Aquarius, and he lived in a castle with his parents who were also wizards, and every night after dinner, he'd go up to the top of his castle and transform himself into a bird and fly across the land, helping animals and children and anyone who needed help. And then and one night after a dinner of such and such, he went up and he transformed himself into a such and such, whatever bird. And and then I'd launch into the story of someone who needed help or something, an animal, and they just rolled out of me. I mean, they just rolled and rolled. I don't know where they came from. They started to come from her day. But she wanted the next night, she wanted another. The next night she wanted another and another and another. She would fill in what Aquarius had for dinner. She would fill in what what the bird was that he transformed into. Um, and I would come up with these stories, and some of them would have to do with altercations that she had had in her day, lessons she had learned. He became this guide for her that she would listen to way beyond me. So he really directed things in her life a lot, and she was in this amazing sense of she was suspended in belief about this character, and she just went with it, and it was like this magical thing that would happen every night at bedtime. 5 years go by. The world has grown. The world is, any writer who's been thinking about a world like that knows that you can almost just sort of look around it and visually uncover any part of it, and you can then explore it or sort of move it around. So basically, at that point in time, 5 years later, everybody knew about Aquarius in my life. I mean, her dad was saying all the time, "You've got to write this stuff down." Um, and I thought, no, 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 no. But I would write down little notes when there had been a particularly long or good story. There was a certain place in his world called the Unknown Territories that was a really surreal place. And if I was just really feeling it, we'd go there for the night and talk about that. And so this incredible world was just built. And I think around 2017, I decided, okay, I want to make a record for my daughter of this. And so I did what any writer would do. I flew to New York City. I got a flat in Greenwich Village. I spent every morning writing and every afternoon walking. I spent every night at an incredible restaurant at the bar staring into the world of the story that I'd just written that morning. I spent every morning having bagels and coffee while I thought and wrote. And by the end of the week, I had 8 stories. By the end of the week, I had a book. I just wrote and wrote and wrote. I just, it was all in there. And so then it just sat there. It sat there, and I didn't do anything with it for a long time. My sister, who was a professional editor, edited it, and then it wasn't until the pandemic. My daughter, like a lot of kids out there, loves audiobooks, and her favorite audiobook was the series The Book of Three, which I don't know, Lloyd Alexander, incredible Welsh reimagining of the Mabinogion, incredible, incredible. And the narrator was this wonderful, wonderful storyteller. And he was the voice in our house for, gosh, 2, 3 years, right?
Hmm.
So on my 50th birthday in lockdown, I decided that the present I was going to give myself was I was going to find this guy and I was going to have him narrate the book. I didn't think about publishing it yet. I just thought, well, I want the narration and I want to surprise my daughter. And I found him. It was a long, hard journey to find him, but I found him and he was up for it and he loved it and he did it. And then I surprised her with that. So that was the next step. And then I should mention that the world of Aquarius shifts and grows and expands, or it shifted and grew and expanded with the world of my daughter. But I took myself to a seaside hotel and I went through the book again, and I was in contact with a book whisperer who is a self-published helper. She and I went through everything, and when I left that hotel, Aquarius was ready to be published, and so lo and behold, that's what happened. It got published right after the pandemic, and yeah, and it's been out there ever since.
Well, hey there. If you're enjoying our podcast, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. Your support means the world to us and helps us keep this show going. We love hearing from you, so any feedback is welcome. And thank you for being a part of our podcast family and for all your support. It truly means a lot to us. How was the transition from taking a story that was very personal to you and your daughter to then make that decision to share it with the rest of the world?
What happened was when I went to New York to write the book, what came out was something parallel, but not really the same. Out of all the notes that I'd taken, all the stories that we had gone over and over again, it kind of it morphed into something that was for an older kid. It was the germ of all of the stories, but it somehow, surprisingly, because I didn't expect this when I started writing, it came out as sort of like a 7 to 12-year-old book rather than what she would have listened to me telling her from like 3 to 5, because it wouldn't have made sense to me to do it otherwise. Everybody had grown up, and so really that's what happened. It metamorphized.
And you mentioned this is 8 stories together in the book, correct?
Yeah. Well, the last one is 3 in 1, but yeah, they're all interlinking.
Okay.
Mhm.
Now, how did you decide to put what order? Are they in an order in chronological order, or how does each story kind of like feed upon another?
Right. Well, they're not necessarily chronological. They go in a linear form, but they take place at different times, and they're sort of like vignettes.
Mm,
So the first chapter is about him and how he became a wizard, or how he became a bird, how he chose his own magic, because in this world everyone chooses their magic and it's their path, and he chooses bird magic because it's the thing that he's been focused on birds for his whole life. And that happens at the birthday party, where everybody's gathered around and the wizard gives their choice and all that kind of thing. So then he studies for a long time. And that first chapter is really about how he studies and
mm,
how he then learns to transform, and how he, on all of his night flights, started to hear people calling for help, or animals calling for help, and how he realized that this was going to be part of his job as a wizard, shall we say, was to be in need. And he learned how he found so much significance in giving and in helping, and how before long, after several years, everybody in the entire Aquarius universe knew who he was, which he took some pride in. Um, and then the other stories are about his family, his mother, Mona, who is a plant wizard, and how she came to be that. His father, who is a weather wizard, which is the most dangerous kind of wizard of
Mm.
all. Um, the kittens that live in the castle, there are 17 kittens. They're eternally kittens. They live in the castle. And there's one that arrived that was extremely naughty and got into the weather wizard's tower workshop and ends up flying through the window on fire, which sounds worse than it is. There's a story about how Aquarius invites the moon down to have tea and cake with him, and then things get out of control. Um, there's a story about how when he is older and flying for longer, his mother gives him like a magical spaghetti that allows him to go further, and he breaks the rules. He goes over the ocean, and this is very bad. And so a lot of this is about him pushing stuff. He goes over the ocean. It starts raining. It starts storming, and he cries out, and he hears like a sound cloud, like a glittering sound cloud. And using echolocation, he all he can do is go towards it, and
Mm.
he ends up falling into the lap of this mermaid who is sitting on a rock, who heard him cry out, and who's singing this song with like all her heart, hoping that whatever it is comes to her so she can save it. And this becomes his best friend. He wakes up the next morning and he's, head in the lap of the mermaid, and she can't speak English. That's Diamond. She has a diamond around her. Anyway, there's another story that has nothing to do with Aquarius except for it's about an elephant, a very mischievous young elephant who Aquarius has had to save many times. And this is a story where this very independent young elephant finally gets to go on an adventure, and her parents don't call him. All she wants to do is swim. So she's deep in the jungle. All she wants to do is swim. She, runs away from home, 4 days to the jungle, gets to the beach, sees the water, and goes in and starts clomping around. And then the other side of the story is told from the perspective of a very polite pufferfish who has a special angel that is a stone angel that has come from a ship and has been under the water for a long time. And from his viewpoint, all he sees are these huge pillars whomping through the ocean and knocking down his angel. And he, as a very polite pufferfish, loses his temper and just into the elephant. And what happens next is really you know, I think many people's favorite story in the entire book is that he has to apologize. He pops his head out, and he sees the elephant Lily. This is a Harry and Lily. This is me trolling Harry Potter. Anyway, um, he sees her, in pain, and they start talking. And what happens next is like the longest conversation between an elephant and a fish that's ever happened anywhere. And she tells him how she's been fascinated by the ocean, and basically he teaches her to use her trunk as a snorkel, and friendship is born that is never ending. Every year they meet again. So, and I think the last three stories are the unknown territories, and it's Aquarius is older, and he is ready to discuss his birthday path. It's his 17th birthday, I think, and he appalls everyone by telling them that he is going to go off to the ocean of tears and try and find his missing grandfather. And that's what happens. The conflict is that his parents already knew this. They suspected, and they, while he was sleeping, put a tracker around his heart, and he is insanely angry about this. That
Mm.
they guessed, first of all, because he really wanted to spring it on them, and that he's going to be tracked in the unknown territories. He wants to go by himself, and so very sullenly he accepts the little bottle of wind that his father gives him, and he goes up to the top of the castle, and he uncorks it, which whirls him away to the unknown territories, and then he's there. And the unknown territories is a very, very weird place. Like you never know what's going to happen there. You never know what you're going to see. It's a barren wasteland. Um, he's so angry right now. He's so angry at his parents that what basically happens is he sees a forest coming toward him and he can't escape it. He moves to the left, it moves to the left. It's a coconut palm forest. He tries to go away, it's coming past him. And so he's very scared. And he remembers what his grandmother, the matriarch, who is a very important part of the story, has always said about people going through a scary forest and coming out different. And he decides to turn this on his head. He decides to let the forest go through him. And so what happens in the forest is he confronts his anger and
Mm.
he gets the key to finding his grandfather, which, is a really, I would say the whole ocean of tears and where his grandfather ended up is a little bit of a metaphor for depression, for the older crowd. For the younger folks, they probably would not recognize this, but I thought a lot about that when I was writing it. I personally, have not struggled with it, but I could really see as I was writing this, how it could be shaped that way. So there's a lot of older themes that came together that were not in the stories for my daughter. Um,
Mm.
but it kind of just wrote itself. Like I feel like I went into a trance and I came out with this book and I, I don't know if I could do it again. I have been asked to write a sequel several times. There are so many stories. There's probably 50 more that I could put into sequels, but I think I'm going to take it slowly. So, um,
Right.
but yeah, so he's, the world is fully intact. You're just dropped right into it. There's a real culture of animals and sort of traditional kind of old-fashioned traditional castle, lore. I wanted to give her a space and everybody a space that's completely away from not just kind of the world of chaos outside of books, but also sort of crazy violent stuff, hackneyed weird language. My role models are Roald Dahl, Susan Cooper, Joan Aiken, E. Nesbitt, all those authors that tried to be like slyly witty, to the parents as well, and also kind of just peep out a little bit behind the words and talk about not give lessons, but kind of be like a little bit like, well, if you heard someone calling for help, you'd help them, wouldn't you? Or in this situation, sometimes we have to face something that's really scary, and you might have had to do that too. Um,
Right.
so yeah, so that's. Does that give you an idea?
Yeah. Is there any particular chapters or moments you especially like you love reading aloud to groups then?
The one about the moon, I really do because I think a lot
Okay.
of people picture the moon differently. I realized after I wrote that chapter and I got a lot of feedback from people reading the book that everyone has a very different idea of what the moon is and kind of what the moon's personality is. And in this book, I just maybe it comes from a book that I read a really long time ago about these two Native American kids who have to escape the moon. But this little moon is extremely mischievous and very sneaky and definitely very mysterious and a girl. So there's that one, and then also there's one about a kitten who gets the very very mischievous kitten who gets delivered to the castle, who breaks all the rules and then gets ends up going sneaking into Raoul, Aquarius's father's workshop and meddling with the tall and small jars of wind and rainbows and clouds and storms, and he knocks down a lightning bolt and then ends up riding it outside the window and out into the courtyard, and this lightning bolt is not quite formed yet. Raoul has been working on it for several months, but it's not done. And the kitten ends up fine, but renamed, and with a tail that then looks like a lightning bolt. And after a 1-minute family meeting, the kitten goes down the road to the grandmother's castle, where it's spoiled constantly. So those parts. There's something in every chapter that's just really people really like. But again, most people really love the Harry and Lily. So yeah.
Yeah, because as you mentioned too, Megan, the book came out. The book came out in 2022. So, and you have people, really kind of like clamoring for you to write a sequel. So, as you mentioned earlier, you're not quite sure, but as you say, you do have other stories that you do like to tell in this world.
Oh yeah. I have a sequel outlined. I
Yeah.
just haven't. I have to go back to New York City. Very important. Very important that I feel like I'm kind of in a space to do it. And I have to enter the world again in a really particular way. And I
Mm.
also, I mean, I'd like to see the first book sell a little bit more. That would be nice to see it sort of, because it's not the main thing in my life. It's
Right.
it's it's an important part of my life for sure, but it's not something that I've spent most of my time on, trying to market the book. I've kind
Right.
of let it just organically go where it will. It's available. It's available at the library. It's available on Amazon. You could listen to it. It's a ebook. So it's out there, and I part of me kind of enjoys seeing who's going to discover it and when. But at the same time, I'd love for it to get going a little bit more steadily, and then if I got that kind of encouragement, then I would go for it, because I kind of like to write the sequel or one of the many. The next books have a lot going on. But I guess I won't talk about that now. So
Excellent. So Megan, if people want to learn more about you and your work, because we didn't touch it, we touched a little bit on it, but you do a lot of things. You do coaching, you do a lot of other stuff that, and you, as you say, you're a founder of a couple schools as well. So,
mm.
uh, if people want to learn more about you and your work, where's the best place they could go to?
They can go to megancarolhaas.com, which is kind of a portfolio site, which just kind of brings everything together in like a constellation of
Mm,
all the different things. Yeah, you can see on there. I have a health company, a peer support health company called Kinnected. I coach graduate business students at Northeastern. Um, I started a company called the Utilikilts Company, which some people in Vermont may have heard of. I co-founded that company. I've written a bunch of essays on Medium about culture and technology and health.
mm,
And then there's the Wizard Aquarius. Yeah. Um,
yeah.
and that I've got my music up there, which is just free for people to listen to over there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Excellent. Well, listen, then Megan, you're gonna have to come back on once you have your second book coming out. Then.
Yes. Yes. I will. Would love to. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me talk about this.
Yeah, no, it's exciting stuff. I'm really glad we're able to sit down and chat.
Me too. Me too. Thanks for having me.